Meanwhile, whispers began spreading among the ground staff and nearby crew members. They hadn't seen a confrontation like this before, especially not one with stakes so high. Some muttered in disbelief, while others silently rooted for the mother and son. The jet sat gleaming under the afternoon sun, a symbol of success, and now the center of a brewing storm. The pilot's behavior raised questions, not just about his assumptions, but about the systems that allowed such bias to thrive unchecked. Was this really about a so-called routine check, or was it something deeper? The woman's composure made it clear this wasn't the first time she had faced this kind of scrutiny. But today she wasn't alone. Her son's actions had already set a ripple effect into motion. Behind the scenes, the person her son had called was working fast. Within minutes, higher-ups at the charter company were notified. Emails were sent, phone lines buzzed, and the situation began escalating beyond the pilot's control. Yet, he still stood there, unwilling to admit he was wrong. His silence spoke volumes, but so did his refusal to apologize. For the mother, this wasn't just about ownership papers or proving a point. It was about what her son was witnessing, how the world could try to diminish you, even when you'd earned your place. She refused to let him walk away from this moment, thinking injustice was something to tolerate. But the real question lingered. What consequences would the pilot face? And what larger truths would this incident uncover about privilege, accountability, and respect? The answers were coming, but they would take this conflict to an entirely new level. Stay with us. This story is just getting started. As the minutes ticked by, the tension on the tarmac was palpable. The mother and her son stood firm, their quiet strength unshaken. The pilot's unease grew more visible with every passing second. He fidgeted with his clipboard, glanced around nervously, and avoided eye contact. It was clear that the call her son had made had set something in motion, something far bigger than the pilot could have anticipated. Nearby, ground staff whispered furiously among themselves, sensing that the situation was spiraling out of the pilot's control. They'd seen wealthy passengers come and go, but this moment felt different. It wasn't just about money or status, it was about dignity. And everyone watching knew they were witnessing a clash that went beyond one jet or one runway. The woman's son stayed focused, watching every move the pilot made. He didn't say much, but the intensity in his eyes spoke volumes. He wasn't just defending his mother, he was standing up for a lifetime of lessons she had taught him about resilience and self-worth. For him, this was personal, and he wouldn't back down until justice was served. Suddenly, two sleek black cars pulled up to the edge of the runway, their arrival commanding attention. Out stepped two executives from the charter company, their faces a mix of concern and determination. They approached quickly, their sharp suits and purposeful strides making it clear they were here to take control. The pilot stiffened, his confidence evaporating as the executives approached. One of them, a woman with an air of authority, introduced herself to the mother and her son, her tone warm but professional. She apologized for the delay and assured them the situation was being handled, but her expression hardened as she turned to the pilot, who now looked like he wished he could disappear. The crowd of onlookers grew quiet, the tension reaching its peak. The mother stood tall, her son by her side, as they waited for what would happen next. Would the pilot finally be held accountable? Or would this turn into yet another story where justice was denied? All eyes were on the unfolding confrontation, and the moment of truth was drawing near. Just as the executives confronted the pilot, something unexpected happened that shifted the entire atmosphere. A third car arrived, its tinted windows concealing whoever was inside. The air grew heavier with anticipation as the door opened, and out stepped an older man in a crisp uniform, clearly someone with significant authority. He wasn't just another executive. He was the director of the entire charter service, someone rarely seen in the field. His presence alone sent a ripple of unease through the crowd. The pilot's face turned pale, his earlier bravado completely gone. He tried to straighten his posture as the director approached, but his nervous energy betrayed him. The director walked past the executives, straight to the mother and her son. With a calm but commanding voice, he introduced himself and apologized deeply for the incident. His words were respectful, but his expression carried the weight of someone who knew this situation had the potential to explode beyond the confines of the airport. Imagine stepping onto a private jet, ready to embark on an exciting journey, only to have your presence questioned in the most humiliating way. That's exactly what happened to a successful Black woman, a self-made entrepreneur, who thought this day was just another chapter of her inspiring success story. But little did she know, it would turn into an ordeal that would make headlines and spark a national conversation. She had every reason to feel proud. Her hard work had earned her this jet. But as she boarded with her teenage son, a pilot confronted her in a way she never expected. His question wasn't about the flight plan or safety procedures. Instead, he demanded proof that she owned the jet. The shock and disbelief on her face said it all. Why would he assume she didn't belong? Her son, a sharp and confident young man, wasn't about to let this slide. He pulled out his phone and made a single call that would change everything. What followed was a series of events that left the pilot scrambling to explain his actions, and ultimately, it cost him his job. But here's where the story gets even more intriguing. Was this just an isolated case of one person's bias, or does it reveal a deeper problem about how success and identity are perceived? And what was it about that phone call her son made that had such an immediate and powerful impact? Stay tuned, because this story isn't just about a moment of injustice. It's about standing up for what's right and proving that dignity and respect aren't negotiable. As we dive into this unfolding drama, you'll hear how one family's resilience turned an infuriating encounter into a powerful lesson that everyone needs to hear. What happened to the pilot, and how did this incident ignite a ripple effect far beyond that airport runway? You won't want to miss what comes next. As the tension lingered in the air, the woman stood her ground, her calm confidence unshaken by the pilot's accusation. She didn't raise her voice or lose her composure. She simply asked one question: why do I need to prove what's already mine? But the pilot, clearly uncomfortable, doubled down, insisting it was a routine check. The implication, however, was loud and clear, and everyone on the small runway seemed to feel it. Her teenage son, standing beside her, was furious but kept his emotions in check. This wasn't the first time he had seen his mother face unfair assumptions. He knew the strength it had taken for her to build the life they now enjoyed, a life filled with the rewards of hard work, determination, and sacrifice. To him, this moment was bigger than just his mother. It was about respect, about standing up to a system that seemed to question people like them at every turn. The other crew members nearby exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what to do. They knew the pilot had overstepped, but no one said a word. It was as if time had frozen, the silence growing heavier with every passing second. The woman reached for her phone, but her son stopped her. "Let me handle this," he said, his voice calm but firm. What happened next left everyone stunned. He made one call, speaking clearly and confidently to someone on the other end. The conversation was brief, but the look on the pilot's face changed instantly. His expression shifted from smug arrogance to visible panic, his confidence unraveling as quickly as it had appeared. Who had the son called? Was it someone with the power to expose the pilot's actions? Or was it simply someone who believed in justice and fairness, no matter the circumstances? As the conversation ended, the pilot stepped back, his face pale. But this wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning of something much larger. Something that would challenge perceptions and reveal the true weight of accountability. Stay tuned, because this is far from over. As the pilot stepped back, his discomfort was evident, but the tension wasn't over. The woman and her son exchanged a look, silent but powerful. She could see the determination in his eyes, a reflection of her own unyielding spirit. He had grown up watching her defy odds, shatter barriers, and claim her space in a world that often tried to push her to the sidelines. Now, he was stepping into that same role, defending what was rightfully theirs. But just when it seemed like the conflict might de-escalate, the mother, with quiet strength, spoke up. She didn't accept the apology, not yet. An apology is not enough, she said firmly. I want to understand why this happened in the first place. Why did he assume I didn't belong here? Her words, though measured, cut through the silence like a blade. Everyone was listening now, the tension building once again. The pilot tried to stammer out an explanation, but before he could finish, the director raised his hand to stop him. Turning to the executives, he asked if the pilot had a history of similar incidents. That's when the second twist came. One of the executives hesitated, then reluctantly admitted that this wasn't the first complaint against him. In fact, there had been several reports of questionable behavior in the past, cases that had somehow been brushed aside. The revelation hit like a thunderclap. The mother's expression didn't change, but her son's eyes flashed with anger. This wasn't just about them anymore. It was about a pattern of behavior that had gone unchecked for far too long. The stakes had just been raised, and it was clear that this was no longer a simple misunderstanding. This was a reckoning. The runway was silent as everyone waited for the director's next move. The revelation of the pilot's troubling history had shifted the weight of the situation, and now all eyes were on him. The director turned to the pilot, his voice firm and deliberate. You've been given chances to correct this behavior, but this time there's no excuse. You've embarrassed this company and disrespected a valued client. Effective immediately, you're suspended pending a full investigation. The pilot's face fell, his defiance replaced with desperation. He tried to protest, but the director cut him off. Enough, he said sharply. Your actions today have consequences, and they're long overdue. With that, the pilot sunk away, his head down, as the weight of his choices finally caught up with him. The mother and her son exchanged a look, relief washing over them. But just as they thought the ordeal was ending, the mother took a step forward, her voice steady yet commanding. I appreciate your action, she told the director, but this isn't just about firing one person. This is about making sure it doesn't happen again. Not to me, not to anyone. Her words hung in the air, powerful and undeniable. The director nodded, clearly moved. You're absolutely right, he said. We need to do better. Starting today, I'm launching a full review of our policies and training programs to ensure something like this never happens again. He promised that the company would take concrete steps to address the deeper issues at play, and for the first time, it felt like real change might come from this moment. As the mother and son finally boarded their jet, ready to leave this chapter behind, the mother looked at her son with pride. You didn't just stand up for me today, she said. You stood up for what's right. But just as the plane prepared to take off, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and froze for a moment. It was a message from someone unexpected, an influential figure who had heard about the incident and wanted to meet. It seemed the story wasn't over yet, and its ripple effects were only just beginning. As the jet lifted off the runway, the mother sat back, letting out a deep breath. The day had been exhausting, but she felt a sense of accomplishment knowing she had stood her ground. Her son sat beside her, scrolling through his phone, his expression thoughtful. He had seen his mother handle countless challenges before, but today felt different. Today, they had forced accountability and sparked a change that might ripple far beyond this one incident. The message on her phone lingered in her mind. It was from a prominent business leader she respected, someone who had reached out after hearing about the incident. They wanted to meet to discuss not just her experience, but how to make systemic changes in industries where bias often went unchecked. It was an opportunity she hadn't anticipated, but one she knew she couldn't ignore. Back at the charter company, the fallout from the day's events was already underway. The executives launched their internal review, as promised, and the pilot's suspension was only the beginning. Employees were required to undergo new training programs, and policies were rewritten to prioritize fairness and accountability. The mother's voice had not only been heard but acted upon, sending a powerful message to others who might have faced similar treatment. For the mother and her son, the experience became a defining moment. It wasn't just about the humiliation or the confrontation. It was about standing up for their worth and refusing to let anyone question it. Over the next few weeks, as news of the incident spread, they were approached by others who shared their own stories of resilience and strength. In the end, what began as an act of disrespect turned into a movement of empowerment. The mother taught her son that day that justice isn't always immediate, but when you hold your ground and demand what's right, change can happen. As the jet soared higher, leaving the runway and its drama behind, she smiled, knowing they had turned a moment of injustice into a story of triumph. And with that, they looked ahead to brighter horizons.